Picture the ocean roughly 38 million years ago. Not the ocean we know today with its blue whales and humpbacks singing across entire ocean basins. Something altogether different. The water is warm and shallow by modern standards, spread across what will one day become North Africa and the Middle East, and it stretches from horizon to horizon under a sky that no human eye has ever seen. Something is moving beneath the surface. It does not breach. It does not sing. It does not produce any sound we would recognize as communication. What it does with a slow and completely unhurried patience is hunt. The creature is roughly 18 meters long, which is about 59 feet. For reference, that is longer than a city bus and a half. But its body is nothing like what you are imagining when you hear the word whale. It is serpentine, almost eel-like. A long, muscular tube of predatory intention threading through warm, shallow water with the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from having nothing in the ocean that frightens you. Its jaws are enormous and lined with teeth that interlock when the mouth closes. These are not the teeth of a filter feeder. They are not designed to strain or sieve. They are designed to seize and to tear. And then it strikes. The target is another whale, smaller, roughly 5 meters or 16 feet long, caught in open water with nowhere to go. The attack is over quickly. What survived that moment, preserved across millions of years in the sands of the Egyptian desert, were the bite marks left behind. Circular, crushing, carved directly into bone. Its name is Basilosaurus, and it is nothing like what you think of when you hear the word whale. If you find that unsettling, good. Because the ocean has not always belonged to the gentle giants we share the planet with today. For tens of millions of years, it belonged to something far more dangerous. And the story of how we got from there to here is one of the most extraordinary journeys in the entire history of life on Earth. Welcome to Deep Ocean Unsolved. If this is your first time here, consider subscribing, because this is exactly the kind of story we tell. The ocean has spent millions of years keeping its secrets, and we are here to drag them into the light. To understand what ancient whales actually were, we first need to understand the world they lived in, because the ocean they inhabited was so different from our own that it barely deserves the same name. Go back roughly 50 million years to a period geologists call the Miocene epoch. The name comes from the Greek word eos, meaning dawn, and it was in a very real sense the dawn of the modern world. The dinosaurs had been gone for about 15 million years by this point. The mass extinction that ended their reign had cleared the stage, and the survivors, small and warm-blooded and adaptable, were busy filling every ecological niche the disappearing giants had left behind. But the world they were filling was not our world. Global temperatures during the early Eocene were between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius warmer than today on average. This is according to a major 2020 synthesis published in the journal Science by a team led by Jiang Xijia at the University of Bristol, who compiled temperature data from ocean sediment cores going back over 60 million years. There were no polar ice caps. Antarctica was covered not in glaciers, but in temperate forests. Crocodilians were swimming in rivers close to the Arctic Circle. The tropics extended so far in both directions that the warm, shallow ocean between them covered a staggering portion of the planet's surface. That ocean had a name. We call it the Tethys Sea. Stretching across what is now the Mediterranean and the Middle East and deep into South Asia, the Tethys was less a single ocean than a vast, warm highway of connected tropical shallows. Its waters were nutrient-rich and sun-drenched. Fish were everywhere. Invertebrates carpeted the seafloor. Sharks were already cruising its currents, including the early members of the Otodus lineage, the family of sharks that would eventually give rise to Megalodon, already growing large on the opportunities the warm, productive sea provided. It was into this world, this hot, predator-rich, shallow tropical sea, that the ancestors of all modern whales first and very tentatively waded. Here is a question that troubled biologists for most of the 19th century, and that still tends to stop people in their tracks when they hear it for the first time. What is the closest living relative of the whale? Not dolphins. They are whales in the broad biological sense, not sharks. They are fish separated from mammals by hundreds of millions of years of completely separate evolution. The answer confirmed by genetic studies published in the 1990s and refined in a landmark 2004 paper by Ulfur Arnason and colleagues in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences is this. The closest living relatives of every whale and dolphin alive today are hippopotamuses, and the closest relatives of hippos are pigs and deer and cattle. What this means is that whales did not emerge from the sea. They descended into it from land, from an ancestor that walked on 4 legs and breathed air exactly the way you are breathing it right now. The transformation that followed is unlike almost anything else in the history of life on this planet. The earliest known member of the whale family was described in a 1983 paper by paleontologist Philip Gingerich of the University of Michigan, who had been excavating fossil beds in the Kala-Chita Hills of what is now Pakistan. What he pulled from rock 53 million years old was a skull, and despite belonging to an animal that had almost certainly never seen open water, that skull contained in its dense, thickened ear bones a structure called the involucrum, the unmistakable anatomical signature of a cetacean, which is the scientific family that includes all whales and dolphins. The animal's name is Pachycetus. It was roughly the size of a large dog. It had hooves. It probably looked to a casual observer something like a long-legged tapir, unremarkable and terrestrial and completely unimpressive standing on the riverbank. And yet, locked inside those ear bones was the blueprint for every whale that has ever lived. What drove Pachycetus toward water in the first place is something we cannot know with complete certainty. But isotope analysis of its fossilized teeth conducted by Thewison and colleagues and published in the Journal of Vertebrate Paleontology in 2001 tells us that it was eating a diet heavily weighted toward freshwater fish and aquatic prey. It probably waded into rivers and coastal shallows the way a grizzly bear fishes a stream today. Tentatively at first, and then with increasing confidence as the water kept rewarding it with food. What happened next took roughly 15 million years, and it produced a sequence of creatures that together represent the most complete record of a major evolutionary transformation anywhere in the fossil record. In 1994, Hans Thewison, then working at Northeastern Ohio Medical University, published a description of a fossil pulled from the same Pakistani rock formations as Pachycetus, but from layers roughly 5 million years younger. The paper appeared in the journal Science, and it immediately changed the way the scientific world understood whale evolution. The fossil was named Ambulocetus natans. It translates with a directness that scientists rarely manage as the walking whale that swims. At approximately 3 meters or about 10 feet in length, Ambulocetus was already substantially larger than Pachycetus, but size was not its most striking feature. Its body was built for 2 worlds simultaneously. The hind limbs were powerful and large-footed and clearly capable of supporting the animal's weight on land, though probably with the same kind of awkward lumbering gait you see in a sea lion hauling itself across a beach. In the water, those same limbs drove an undulating body motion that would have made Ambulocetus a surprisingly effective swimmer for an animal that still had functional legs. Its jaws were enormous. Not the narrow fish-catching jaws of a dolphin or the wide baleen-fringed mouth of a filter feeder. Wide, powerful, armed with large interlocking teeth, this was an ambush predator, and a very patient one. The structure of its inner ear, as Thewison's analysis revealed, suggests it could detect vibrations transmitted through the ground by pressing its lower jaw against the substrate. It may have lain completely still at the edges of estuaries and river mouths, sensing the approach of prey through the earth itself before the prey had any idea it was in danger. Think of it as the crocodile of its era, an animal that had learned the oldest ambush predator's trick in the book. Get close to the water and wait for the world to come to you. Roughly 2 million years after Ambulocetus, something fundamental had shifted. Rhodhocetus kasrani, described in a 1994 paper in Science by Philip Gingerich and colleagues, represented the next step, and it was a significant one. Rhodhocetus still had hind limbs, but the connection between its pelvis and its spine, the structural joint that allows a land animal to bear its own weight against gravity, had weakened, had begun to let go. The hip was in an anatomical sense starting to detach from the vertebral column. This is not a minor detail. For a land animal, a disconnected pelvis is a catastrophe because it means the hind limbs can no longer push the body upright against gravity. Rhodhocetus had passed a point of no return. The sea was no longer a resource it visited when the hunting was good. It was the only environment in which it could survive. The ocean had claimed its first whale. By 40 million years ago, the transformation was complete. Basilosaurus isis, the creature whose bite marks we described at the very beginning of this video, was not a transitional form. There was nothing tentative or experimental about it. No lingering hoof, no functional hip, no ambiguity about whether it belonged to land or sea. It was fully and irreversibly and magnificently marine. The first Basilosaurus bones were discovered in the American South in the 1840s, specifically in Louisiana and Alabama, and they were so enormous that local settlers reportedly used some of them as furniture. When the paleontologist Richard Harlan described the fossils in 1834, he believed he was looking at the remains of a gigantic sea reptile, a sea serpent of almost biblical scale, hence the name Basilosaurus, meaning king lizard. The error was corrected a few years later by the British anatomist Richard Owen, who recognized the mammalian structure of the bones, but the name, as so often happens in taxonomy, had already stuck, and the proportions that had misled Harlan were not wrong, just misidentified. Basilosaurus reached lengths of between 15 and 20 meters, which is 50 to 65 feet. Its body was elongated to a degree that no modern whale comes close to matching. Not streamlined exactly, but serpentine. The spine was designed for a swimming motion that was closer to an eel threading through water than the powerful up and down tail strokes of a modern blue whale. And near the rear of that enormous body, barely visible against the scale of the animal, were two small vestigial hind limbs, complete with femur and tibia, and even small ankle bones. They could not have reached the ground. They bore no weight. According to a 1990 analysis by Gingerich and colleagues published in Science, these remnant limbs were almost certainly non-functional for locomotion and may have served instead as guides during mating. A final ghostly trace of the terrestrial world from which Basilosaurus had descended tens of millions of years earlier. The teeth tell the rest of the story. The front teeth of Basilosaurus were conical and pointed, built for piercing and gripping. The rear teeth were something different entirely, triangular and serrated and interlocking when the jaw closed. According to work published in 2011 by Mark Oohan of George Mason University, in the Annual Review of Earth and Planetary Sciences, the wear patterns on Basilosaurus teeth are consistent with processing large and physically resistant prey, not just catching it, but consuming it with considerable force. And we know exactly what that prey included. The site of Wadi al-Hittan, which means the Valley of the Whales, lies in the western desert of Egypt, roughly 150 kilometers or about 93 miles southwest of Cairo. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the reason for that designation is simple. Hundreds of Basilosaurus and Darudan specimens have been excavated from its fossil beds over the past century. But what makes certain specimens particularly significant is what was found alongside them. Skulls of Darudan atrox, a smaller and more dolphin-like contemporary of Basilosaurus that reached roughly 4 to 5 meters or 13 to 16 feet in length, bearing circular crushing bite marks, matching in size and spacing to the teeth of Basilosaurus. Work examining the Wadi al-Hitan material by Philip Gingerich and colleagues identified juvenile Dorudon skulls with puncture wounds concentrated around the cranium, suggesting that Basilosaurus was not merely an opportunistic scavenger picking off the dead. It was an active predator of other whales. The ocean's first great whale was hunting its own kind. Dorudon itself deserves more than a passing mention despite its fate as prey. Smaller and more streamlined than Basilosaurus, it had a body plan that was closer to the ancestor of all modern cetaceans than almost anything that came before it. Compact, fusiform, well-developed tail. Its skull shows the early signs of anatomical changes that would, in a few million years, produce both the echolocating dolphins and the filter-feeding giants we know today. Dorudon was not a dead end. It was a template for everything that came after. 34 million years ago, the world the ancient whales had known effectively ended. Not all of it, but the warm, shallow, productive Tethys Sea that had cradled whale evolution for 20 million years was about to undergo a transformation so severe that the creatures it had produced, including Basilosaurus and every one of its relatives, would not survive it. Geologists call this event the Eocene-Oligocene boundary. Paleontologists have borrowed a more expressive name for it from the French: the Grande Coupure, the Great Break. Global temperatures crashed. Antarctica, which had been forested and temperate for tens of millions of years, began to glaciate for the first time. Sea levels dropped as water was locked into the expanding ice sheets. The warm, shallow seas that had made the Tethys such an extraordinary nursery for early whales contracted and cooled. And the entire family of Basilosauridae, every member without exception, including Basilosaurus and Dorudon, disappeared from the fossil record entirely. But from the survivors of that extinction, something genuinely new emerged. Two lineages, radically different in their approach to ocean life. And between them, they would come to dominate the seas for the next 34 million years, right up to the present day. The first lineage developed a sensory system so sophisticated that it still has no real parallel anywhere in the animal kingdom. Odontochaetae, the toothed whales, evolved the capacity for echolocation, which is essentially biological sonar. By producing high-frequency clicks through specialized air sacs in the skull and focusing them through a lens of fatty tissue called the melon positioned at the front of the forehead, toothed whales could project sound into the ocean and read the returning echoes with extraordinary precision. Distance, shape, size, density, movement. All of it available in complete darkness, in murky water, at ranges that no eye could match. Early evidence of this echolocation architecture appears in the fossil record by approximately 28 to 30 million years ago, as documented in a 2014 study by Jonathan Geisler of the New York Institute of Technology and colleagues published in Nature Communications. Among the earliest well-known echolocating whales was Squalodon, sometimes called the shark-toothed dolphin, a genus that persisted across the Oligocene and into the Miocene and is characterized by triangular serrated teeth that give it an almost unsettling appearance, even by the standards of prehistoric creatures. The second lineage took a completely different gamble. Rather than investing in sophisticated sensory hardware, they invested in scale and in an entirely new way of feeding. The Mysticeti, which are the baleen whales, began the long process of replacing teeth with one of the most unlikely structures in all of mammalian biology. Baleen, the flexible keratinous plates that hang from the upper jaw of modern right whales and blue whales, is made of the same protein as your fingernails. In its earliest evolutionary form, it was probably more suggestion than structure, a thickening and roughening of gum tissue that allowed early Mysticetes to strain water slightly more efficiently than teeth alone could manage. The transition was gradual, and the most extraordinary evidence for it sits in a single remarkable fossil called Etiocetus weltoni, described originally in 1966 and revisited in careful detail in a 2017 study by Carlos Mauricio Peredo and colleagues at George Mason University, published in Current Biology. Aetiocetus had both teeth and the beginnings of baleen in the same jaw. At the same time, it is the evolutionary equivalent of a creature caught mid-sentence, still speaking the old language and already learning the new one. By the time the Miocene epoch opened roughly 23 million years ago, the ocean had settled into something approaching its modern configuration. The Drake Passage, the channel separating South America from Antarctica, had fully opened somewhere between 30 and 25 million years earlier, and in doing so had established the Antarctic Circumpolar Current, the most powerful ocean current on Earth. Cold, nutrient-rich water was upwelling in new patterns along the coasts of the Americas and Africa. The productivity of these cold seas was enormous. Tiny crustaceans, krill and krill-like organisms bloomed in quantities that are difficult to even conceptualize. And into this abundance, the baleen whales expanded. But the Miocene ocean was not yet the relatively peaceful domain of filter feeders. What it was for roughly 20 million years was closer to an arms race, a concentrated theater of evolutionary competition in which multiple lineages of enormous predators competed for the same prey. And the prey they were competing for, increasingly, were the whales themselves. We start with the most famous predator in ocean history. Otodus megalodon, known simply as megalodon, was not merely a large shark. It was the largest predatory fish that has ever existed, and its scale so far exceeds anything alive today that size estimates continue to generate debate among researchers. The most defensible current figures, including those presented in a 2022 paper by Catalina Pimiento of the University of Zurich and colleagues in Science Advances, suggest a maximum length of approximately 15 to 16 meters or 49 to 52 feet for the largest individuals, with a body mass potentially exceeding 70 metric tons. Its teeth reached 18 centimeters or about 7 inches in length. The estimated bite force, calculated through biomechanical modeling by Stephen Rowe and colleagues at the University of New South Wales in a 2008 paper published in the Journal of Zoology, ranged between 100,000 and 180,000 newtons. That is many times greater than the bite force of any animal alive today, and those teeth were being used on whales. Fossil whale bones from multiple sites across the United States, including the Bone Valley Formation in Florida and the Calvert Cliffs deposits in Maryland, bear the distinctive gouges and puncture marks of megalodon predation. The pattern of attack, analyzed by Breton Kent in his 1994 monograph Fossil Sharks of the Chesapeake Bay region, suggests a consistent strategy. Target the fins and flippers and tail flukes first to immobilize the prey and then deliver the killing bites. Bones bearing healed bite marks tell us something equally important. Some whales survived these attacks. The ocean's largest predator was formidable but not infallible. But Megalodon was not alone in the Miocene ocean. In 2008, a team led by Olivier Lambert of the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, working with material excavated from the Pisco Formation in the Peruvian desert, one of the richest Miocene marine fossil deposits anywhere on Earth, described a creature so alarming that they named it after two of history's most iconic monsters. Its formal name is Livyatan melvillei. The genus name honors Leviathan, the biblical sea beast. The species name honors Herman Melville, the author of Moby Dick. The naming was entirely appropriate. Livyatan was a member of the sperm whale family, the same lineage that produced the modern sperm whale, which is alive today and which you might reasonably think of as a deep-diving squid hunter with relatively peaceful intentions. Livyatan had none of those peaceful intentions. Estimated at between 13 and 18 meters or 43 to 59 feet in length, comparable in overall size to a modern sperm whale, it possessed something its modern relatives lack entirely: enormous functional teeth in both jaws. The modern sperm whale has teeth only in its lower jaw, and even those play little role in feeding. Livyatan had teeth up to 36 centimeters or 14 inches long, erupting from both upper and lower jaws and interlocking when the mouth closed. Lambert and colleagues' 2010 description published in Nature was unambiguous about what this architecture was built for. Not squid, not fish, other whales. Livyatan was a raptorial predator, meaning it seized and tore large prey directly with its jaws rather than filtering it from the water. It almost certainly possessed the spermaceti organ, the large oil-filled structure in the forehead of modern sperm whales used for echolocation and buoyancy control, suggesting it was also a sophisticated acoustic hunter. But the teeth were not about acoustic hunting. They were about killing things that were already very close. The Pisco Formation, where Livyatan was found, has yielded an extraordinary snapshot of Miocene Pacific life. Multiple species of baleen whale, early dolphins, seals, enormous seabirds, and sharks, including megalodon, are all represented in the same fossil beds. It was a single ecosystem in which Livyatan and megalodon occupied the same water and hunted overlapping prey and presumably competed directly with one another for resources. Two apex predators, different lineages entirely, same ocean, same prey. We do not know exactly how that competition played out day to day, but we know how it ended. Both Livyatan and megalodon are gone. Livyatan disappears from the fossil record by around 9 million years ago. Megalodon, according to a 2019 study by Robert Bosanecker and colleagues at the College of Charleston published in Piaget, vanished approximately 3.6 million years ago as the ocean cooled and the warm water whale populations it depended on either declined or shifted into colder waters that Megalodon could not effectively follow. The ocean that replaced them was quieter and, in a sense, far stranger. The blue whale is the largest animal that has ever lived on this planet, not the largest animal alive today. The largest animal in the entire 3.8 billion year history of life on Earth. At up to 30 meters or 98 feet long and approaching 180 metric tons, it surpasses even the largest dinosaurs in sheer body mass. And yet the part that tends to genuinely surprise people is this. The blue whale's extraordinary size is in evolutionary terms surprisingly recent. The ancestors of blue whales were not giants. Through most of the Miocene baleen whales were considerably smaller than their modern descendants, efficient filter feeders, but nothing close to record breakers. The dramatic increase in body size, the emergence of true gigantism across multiple baleen whale lineages more or less simultaneously happened largely within the last 3 to 5 million years. Why? The answer, according to research published in 2017 in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B by Graham Slater of the University of Chicago and colleagues, and developed further in a 2022 study from Jeremy Goldbogen's laboratory at Stanford University published in Science, is tied directly to the Ice Ages. Beginning approximately 2.6 million years ago, the Earth entered a period of intensifying glacial cycles, periods of advance and retreat by the polar ice sheets, which drove dramatic fluctuations in ocean productivity. During glacial maxima, cold, nutrient-rich water surged along continental coastlines in intense seasonal upwelling events, producing short-lived but extraordinarily concentrated explosions of krill and small schooling fish. These seasonal prey patches were enormous in extent and dense almost beyond imagining, but available only briefly before dispersing. And they rewarded a very specific strategy: the ability to travel vast distances between lean seasons and breeding grounds, arrive at the prey patch, and consume as much as possible in as short a time as possible. Large body size in this context is not an extravagance. It is an engineering solution. A larger whale can store more energy as blubber. It can sustain longer migrations across entire ocean basins. It can generate the momentum needed for the explosive lunge-feeding events that Goldbogen's team at Stanford has been studying using high-resolution biologging tags attached to free-swimming animals. Events in which a blue whale opens its mouth and engulfs a volume of water larger than its own body in a fraction of a second and strains tons of krill through its baleen in a single pass. The result of millions of years of this pressure was the blue whale, an animal so large that its heart alone weighs approximately 180 kilograms, or about 400 pounds. But size alone does not tell the full story of what the ocean eventually produced. Modern cetaceans possess brains of extraordinary complexity. The bottlenose dolphin has a brain-to-body ratio second only to modern humans among all mammals. The sperm whale carries the largest brain of any animal ever measured, over 8 kilograms or 17 pounds of densely folded neural tissue. Orca brains exhibit a degree of cortical folding found in very few species outside of primates. Compare all of this to Basilosaurus, which had a small, smooth brain, efficient for the purposes it served but unremarkable by any modern standard, and you begin to appreciate the scale of what changed between then and now. The evolution of echolocation likely drove the initial expansion of neural complexity in toothed whales, demanding entirely new brain regions for interpreting returning sound with sufficient precision to hunt in complete darkness. Social living as dolphin and orca societies became increasingly sophisticated, placed additional pressure on what researchers call social intelligence, the capacity to track relationships and alliances and individual identities across large and dynamic groups. And then there is whale song. Humpback whales produce vocalizations of such structural complexity that they have occupied musicologists as much as biologists. The songs change over time. New phrases emerge and spread through populations across entire ocean basins as individual whales hear and learn and incorporate novel elements into their own performances. This is cultural transmission, the passing of learned behavior between individuals and across generations through something other than genetics. No fossil can preserve a song. No ancient bone holds the memory of a learned behavior. But somewhere in the 50-million-year arc from Pachycetus to the humpback, the capacity for culture emerged. And that, more than any measurement of length or tooth or body mass, may be the most astonishing thing the ocean has ever produced. We tend to think of evolution as a process of steady improvement, as though each generation of life is working towards some distant goal, getting closer with every passing million years to something better and more refined. The whales suggest something quite different. Basilosaurus was not a failed or imperfect whale. It was a perfect Basilosaurus, a creature precisely matched to the warm, shallow, predator-rich sea it inhabited. When that sea disappeared, it disappeared with it. Not because it had failed, but because the world it had been built for had simply moved on. Pachycetus did not know it was the first whale. Ambulocetus did not know it was crossing a threshold that could not be uncrossed. Dorodon, pursued through the warm waters of the ancient Tethys by something 18 meters long with absolute certainty of its intentions, was not thinking about what its descendants would eventually become, but what they became, what all of them across 50 million years of pressure and extinction and reinvention eventually became, is swimming in the oceans right now, singing, diving to depths of 3,000 meters or nearly 10,000 feet, nursing calves on milk so rich it makes cream look thin, conducting the longest migrations of any animal on Earth. The ocean did not set out to make gentle giants. It made survivors. And the gentleness, if that is even the right word for animals of such scale and intelligence, came later, slowly, as the violence that had shaped them gradually receded and something entirely new took its place. We share this planet with the endpoints of one of the greatest journeys in the history of life on Earth. It seems worth knowing where they came from.